There is a lot that is going on this week, and Tim and I in particular will have conversations about this. There's too much happening in this week, and so we get things piled up on top of each other. So is it Palm Sunday, or is it the Sunday of the Passion? You get to pick one. No, you don't get to pick one. You get to have both. So, but it's a bad idea. Palm Sunday, Sunday of the Passion, anytime they got to put a slash there, there's too much happening. So it's kind of like if your birthday is also Christmas, it's too much. And then later in the week, on the day that we celebrate and remember the Last Supper, we will, of course, be washing your feet. Because, communion, right? Yeah. And we're going to read the Passion today because you might not come on Friday. But on Friday, we'll read it again from John because John doesn't get his own year in the lectionary cycle, and we feel bad for him. So we decided we'd read it again on Good Friday. In case you didn't catch it today, you get a double dose. And then on Saturday, because we still feel bad for John, we'll read his account of the gospel for Easter on Saturday. But if you don't do that, on Sunday, you can read from Luke because it's Luke's year, but we feel bad for John. And so you can read the Easter account from John on Sunday if you don't have a Saturday service. You got it? There's a lot going on in this week, and there's only so many days, so we have to do it. The most theologically deep reason that I have heard that we read the Passion today is because people might not come on Friday. Now, there are other reasons, because the lectionary guru said, "Thou shalt read it." And I heard a joke once that I just love. What is the difference between a liturgist and a terrorist? You can negotiate with a terrorist. Now, all of that said, we're going to talk about the readings a bit here. The first reading that we had out in the narthex here is the Palm Sunday reading that we get from the Gospel of Luke, which we are in the year of Luke, so that makes sense. But there's some things missing in it, you might have noticed. Donkeys, missing. Palms, missing. Anything with the word branch associated with it, missing. We do have cloaks and colts. Not quite rhyme, but close. But no donkey, no palms. Now, when we think of Palm Sunday historically, our image of Palm Sunday has been shaped in some ways by what is not read today. What is not read is the stuff that happens in between the two readings that we shared today from Luke. We cut straight from Palm Sunday to Good Friday, skipping all of the stories in between. Now on Thursday, we'll dial back and we will hear about the Last Supper and the foot washing, the mandate, mandatum mundi, to remember Christ's call for us to serve and to love our neighbor. But today, we skip to the chase. Now, there are a few things with this that we miss then. When I was a kid in Sunday school, I always heard the Palm Sunday story, and because of the sequence of readings, I interpreted it this way. Everybody loved Jesus at the big parade, where everyone was happy. Picture guys on the street with little carts selling their kosher hot dogs. You can picture that there would be lollipops, there were palm fronds that were huge, and it was this celebration. People came out early to make sure that they had good seats closest to the curb to see Jesus, and it was this fabulous thing. And then about 12 and a half minutes later, they hate him. They hate him so badly that they want him killed. And I was always like, yeah, that makes sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all. What is going on here? What have we missed in the story? There are a few things. First off, we're not talking about the same people. That's an important part of the story. The procession into Jerusalem is the rough edges of society, or as we might say, most of society, gathering. They weren't celebrating. They weren't selling kosher hot dogs. Another thing we miss from Luke is a word that comes out in all of the other Gospels. Hosanna. Hosanna, which again as a kid I assumed meant hooray. In old America we might have said huzzah, right? Something like that. It means save us. Save us. Well, that kind of changes the tone of the parade a bit, doesn't it? Save us. Hosanna. Hashua. Jesus. Savior. These words are all in a row here, right? Jesus comes in, and then curiously, over time, we had a great discussion last night on the newer Bonhoeffer movie and the challenges of standing up against might makes right empire. What we have in the text today, in my mind, is kind of curious that we skip a part of the story that is central to why Good Friday even happens. What happens immediately after the parade? The part of the story that you might think would be read next, right? After what we read in the narthex. The part of the story where Jesus and a few thousand of his friends head into the temple, the center of the economy of Jerusalem, the center of the religious life of the Jewish people, the center of power of both the Jewish leadership and their overlords from Rome, the center of the universe. And Jesus goes in and does not take pictures for his Instagram of the cool buildings, but makes a weapon, a whip, kicks over tables of the money changers, runs people out of the place, and depending on which gospel you're reading, might be there for days, occupying the temple and teaching and sharing parables about the corruption of the religious leadership over the people. Now, as you can imagine, that went over big. As I sometimes will tell the confirmands, if I went over to CVS and started knocking over the display cases, how long do you think that would last? Now let's make that the National Cathedral. Let's make that the Stock Exchange and the federal government all in one place. Get about 3 steps, right? But Jesus has taken over the place so profoundly that the high priests are kind of standing around with their own police, kind of with their hands in their pockets going, so, how long you planning on being in town? So you're going to head out at some point here, and it doesn't happen. So they turn to the Romans and say, this guy, you won't believe what he's doing. He's tearing up the temple. No, they don't say that. They go to Pilate and they say, he's telling people that they shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar. We're not concerned. We're just concerned for you. No, they're concerned also, but that's what they're saying. And after a while, Pilate's like, I don't want to do this because it's pretty clear that you guys are giving me not a win-lose opportunity or a win-win opportunity. This is like a lose-lose opportunity that you all are giving me. Jesus is causing a problem. Jesus is dangerous. Jesus is threatening the status quo, where a few people in the Jewish elite and leadership, scratching the back of the Romans and vice versa, are getting rich, while people are going hungry, while people are struggling. In fact, it is so bad that a man who had been arrested for insurrection and murder, not that we hear those phrases in our world today, I'm just saying it's in the Greek, is let free. Is let free. But not Jesus. Now, there's a lot going on with this story that I want you to hang on to. But I want to take a little step around and talk about this week. Now, I drive around places like I'm sure you do, and since it's of professional interest, I'm always curious to see what kind of a sign a church has outside at this time of year that they've put up. And there are some churches, everybody's got a sign that tells you about Easter. But not every church tells you about Good Friday or Maundy Thursday. Likely they have these services, likely. But what they're telling you about is Easter. And what I'm here to tell you is that the service has started today and that it ends next Sunday. There are steps along the way that we need to remember. When we get to Easter and we celebrate the resurrection of Christ, there is a critical prerequisite for a resurrection. Anybody think of what the prerequisite is for a resurrection? Somebody's got to die, right? It's tough to do a resurrection if someone has not died. And if you skip that part of the story, you have missed a profound part of what is happening during this week. The point at which we might argue that God overlaps with our human experience to the last drop of blood. That God became one of us, not for this saccharine, chocolate bunny only kind of Easter. That's not what Easter is. Easter is that door that opens, that hope that comes when our millennia of experience says, cannot happen. And the power of it comes from walking through all of the steps. So I hope I've opened the week for you, but I would challenge you to take all the steps. The power of Easter and its joy will be that much richer.